The steam rose from the espresso machine like morning mist, curling around her fingers as she pulled the perfect shot. Just another Tuesday at Bean There Café in downtown Portland. The regulars knew her as Sarah, the quiet barista who remembered everyone's order and never got rattled during the morning rush. What they didn't know was that the woman making their lattes had once been the most feared operative in Eastern Europe. A ghost who could disappear into crowds, eliminate targets without a trace, and extract intelligence from the most secured facilities. But that was before she walked away from everything, changed her name, and chose steam wands over sniper rifles. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The radio crackled to life from the back office, cutting through the gentle hum of conversation and clinking ceramic. Static filled the air, followed by a voice that made her blood freeze. "Black Widow, you're needed. Phoenix Protocol is active. Repeat, Phoenix Protocol is active." The espresso cup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the tile floor. 23 months. That's how long she'd been invisible. How long she'd convinced herself that Sarah the barista was real and Elena Vasquez, the assassin, was just a nightmare she'd finally woken up from. But some ghosts refused to stay buried. The morning had started like any other in the small cafe tucked between a vintage bookstore and a yoga studio on Morrison Street. Sarah arrived at 5:30, same as always, unlocking the heavy glass door with practiced efficiency. The familiar ritual of grinding beans, calibrating the espresso machine, and arranging pastries in the display case had become her meditation, her anchor to a normal life she'd never thought possible. Regular customers began filtering in by 6:15. Marcus, the software engineer with the nervous laugh who always ordered a double-shot cortado. Janet, the veterinarian who preferred her coffee black and strong enough to wake the dead. Tommy, the college student who paid in crumpled singles and always left exact change. They saw her as part of the scenery, reliable and unremarkable. The kind of person who blended into the background of their busy lives. Sarah had perfected the art of being forgettable. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a simple ponytail, no jewelry except for small silver studs in her ears. She wore the same uniform every day, forest green apron over dark jeans and comfortable shoes. Her movements were efficient, but not noteworthy. Her smile genuine, but not memorable. She'd studied the patterns of normalcy like other people studied foreign languages, and she'd become fluent in being ordinary. The radio in the back office had been silent for months. She'd almost forgotten it was there, hidden behind boxes of coffee filters and cleaning supplies. It was supposed to be her emergency line, the final thread connecting her to a world she'd supposedly left behind. Intelligence agencies didn't believe in clean breaks. There were always contingencies, always one last job, always a reason to pull their best assets back into the darkness. When the transmission cut through the morning routine, Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward her hip, muscle memory reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. The Glock 19 she'd carried for 8 years was locked in a safe deposit box across town, along with 3 different passports and enough cash to disappear anywhere in the world. She'd sworn she'd never touch any of it again. Marcus was mid-sentence, about a deadline, when the cup shattered. He stopped talking, looking down at the spreading puddle of espresso and ceramic shards. "You okay, Sarah? You look like you've seen a ghost." His concern was genuine, the kind of worry that came from months of small-talk familiarity. She forced a smile and reached for the towel hanging from her apron. "Just clumsy this morning. Let me make you a fresh one." Her voice sounded normal, but her hands were shaking slightly as she swept up the broken pieces. The radio had gone silent again, but the message continued to echo in her mind. Phoenix Protocol. She knew what that meant. Somewhere, a situation had escalated beyond the capabilities of standard operatives. They needed someone who could walk through fire and come out the other side. They needed Black Widow. The morning rush continued around her, customers ordering their usual beverages while she operated on autopilot. Her training kicked in automatically, the ability to compartmentalize that had kept her alive in Moscow, Berlin, and a dozen other cities where one mistake meant death. She made lattes and cappuccinos while her mind calculated exit strategies, cataloged potential threats, and assessed the tactical situation. Janet ordered her usual black coffee and lingered longer than normal, studying Sarah's face with the observational skills of someone who spent her days reading animal behavior. "You sure you're all right, honey? You seem distracted today." The veterinarian's voice carried the gentle authority of someone accustomed to calming frightened creatures. Sarah nodded, handing over the steaming cup. "Just one of those mornings. You know, sometimes the past has a way of catching up when you least expect it." The words were more honest than she'd intended, but Janet seemed to accept them as normal workplace stress. She left a generous tip and headed out to her clinic, unaware that she'd just spoken to one of the most dangerous women in the Western Hemisphere. The radio crackled again during the mid-morning lull. This time the voice was different, older, with an accent Sarah recognized immediately. Russian, but softened by years of living in America. "Widow, this is Phoenix Actual. We have a situation in Seattle. Asset compromised, package lost, hostile forces converging. You are our only option." The transmission lasted exactly 15 seconds before cutting back to static. Sarah's reflection stared back at her from the polished surface of the espresso machine. Same brown eyes, same unremarkable features, but something had changed. The careful mask of normalcy was slipping, revealing glimpses of the predator beneath. She'd spent 2 years learning to be Sarah, but it had taken only 2 radio transmissions to remember she was Elena. Phoenix Protocol wasn't just a code name. It was a promise and a threat wrapped in bureaucratic language. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. When they activated Phoenix, it meant conventional methods had failed. It meant the situation was dire enough to risk burning a deep cover asset. It meant they were calling in their best operative, regardless of her current status or personal wishes. The bell above the door chimed as a new customer entered. Sarah looked up from the espresso machine, expecting another regular, but froze when she saw the woman standing in the doorway. Tall, athletic build, dark hair cropped short in. A style that was both professional and practical. She wore a charcoal business suit that couldn't quite hide the outline of a shoulder holster, and her eyes swept the café with the systematic precision of someone trained to identify threats and exits. "I'll have a black coffee large," the woman said, approaching the counter. Her voice was professional, controlled, but Sarah caught the slight tension underneath. This wasn't a customer. This was a handler, someone sent to deliver a message that couldn't be trusted to radio waves. Sarah poured the coffee with steady hands, her mind racing through possibilities. The woman could be CIA, NSA, or one of the dozen other agencies that had used her services over the years. She could be Russian SVR, sent to either recruit or eliminate a former asset. Or she could be freelance, working for private contractors who'd inherited Sarah's file when she went dark. "Cream or sugar?" Sarah asked, maintaining her barista persona even as she calculated the distance to the kitchen, where she kept a ceramic knife sharp enough to cut through bone. "Black is fine." The woman placed a 20 on the counter for a $4 coffee. "Keep the change. And take your time with the next customer. We need to talk." She moved to a corner table, positioning herself where she could watch both the door and the counter. Professional habits died hard. Sarah finished serving the remaining customers, her movements automatic while her mind focused on the woman in the corner. She'd seen that type before, the kind of operative who climbed the ranks through competence rather than politics. Dangerous, but probably not here to kill her. If elimination was the goal, they would have sent someone less obvious. The café emptied as the morning rush transitioned to the pre-lunch lull. Sarah locked the front door and flipped the sign to "back in 15 minutes, then walked to the corner table. The woman gestured to the chair across from her, and Sarah sat down, noting how her visitor's hand never strayed far from her jacket. "You can call me Agent Torres," the woman said, her voice low enough that it wouldn't carry to the street. "I'm here because we have a problem that requires your particular skill set." Sarah leaned back in her chair, projecting the mild confusion of a barista who'd stumbled into something beyond her understanding. "I think you have me confused with someone else. I make coffee, not whatever it is you're looking for." Torres smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Elena Vasquez, born in Volgograd, recruited by the GRU at age 16, trained at the Kozelsk facility. Operational designation Black Widow. 47 confirmed eliminations across 12 countries, specializing in deep infiltration and close quarters combat. Disappeared from active duty 23 months ago after the Prague incident. The pretense crumbled. Sarah's posture shifted slightly, muscle memory overriding months of careful conditioning. Her hands moved to the table's edge, ready to flip it if necessary. Her voice lost its Pacific Northwest friendliness, replaced by the cold precision of a trained killer. "That woman is dead. I'm just a barista now." Sarah Mitchell, Social Security number issued 18 months ago, apartment lease on Hawthorne Boulevard, tax return showing income from being their café. Torres pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. "Very thorough identity construction. The agency does good work when they want to disappear someone." Sarah glanced at the screen, seeing surveillance photos of herself taken over the past month. Pictures of her walking to work, grocery shopping, even jogging in the park. They'd been watching her, probably since the day she'd arrived in Portland. The illusion of freedom had been exactly that, an illusion. "What do you want?" Sarah asked, abandoning any pretense of confusion. If they had this much information, there was no point in maintaining the cover story. Torres leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. 12 hours ago, one of our assets in Seattle was compromised during a routine intelligence gathering operation. Dr. Amanda Chen, a bioweapons specialist working undercover at Genesis Pharmaceuticals. She was supposed to deliver a package containing research data on a new strain of engineered virus. Instead, she's disappeared, along with the package. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Bioweapons meant mass casualties, the kind of threat that could kill thousands before anyone realized what was happening. "Who took her? That's what we need you to find out." Torres swiped the tablet screen, revealing satellite imagery of an industrial complex. Genesis Pharmaceuticals has been developing classified projects for the Defense Department. Dr. Chen was our inside source, reporting on their progress. Her last transmission indicated she'd discovered something that wasn't supposed to exist. The images showed a modern facility surrounded by high fences and security checkpoints. Sarah's trained eye automatically cataloged the defensive measures, identifying weak points and potential entry routes. Old habits died hard, even when you tried to bury them under layers of normalcy. "This isn't my problem anymore," Sarah said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I'm retired. Find someone else." Torres laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "There is no one else. Not for this. The facility is crawling with private security, corporate espionage experts, and at least 3 different intelligence agencies. We need someone who can get in, find Dr. Chun, and extract both her and the package without triggering an international incident." Sarah stared at the images, her mind automatically formulating infiltration strategies. The facility was impressive, but not impenetrable. She could think of half a dozen ways to breach the perimeter, assuming she still had access to the right equipment and support. But that would mean returning to a world she'd spent 2 years trying to escape. "I have a life here," she said, gesturing around the empty café. "It's not much, but it's mine. I don't kill people anymore. I don't steal secrets or manipulate governments. I make coffee and go home to my cat." Torres nodded sympathetically. "I understand. You've built something here, something normal. But normal people don't have the skills we need. Normal people can't infiltrate a bioweapons facility and extract an asset without causing a war." The tablet screen changed again, showing a photograph of a middle-aged Asian woman in a lab coat. Dr. Chun looked like any other scientist, someone who devoted her life to research and discovery. But Sarah could see the tension in her eyes, the weight of carrying secrets that could reshape the world. "What makes you think she's still alive?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. If Dr. Chun was dead, they wouldn't need Black Widow. They'd need a body recovery specialist. Because whoever took her needs what she knows. The package she was carrying contained more than just research data. It included access codes to Genesis's primary database, information that could expose their entire operation. Torres paused, letting the implications sink in. If that data falls into the wrong hands, it won't just be about bioweapons. It'll be about who controls the next generation of genetic warfare. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of inevitability settling over her like a familiar coat. She'd always known this day would come, that the past would eventually catch up with her carefully constructed present. The only question was whether she'd walk back into the darkness willingly or be dragged kicking and screaming. "What's the timeline?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Torres smiled, recognizing the shift in Sarah's demeanor. "Dr. Chun has been missing for 12 hours. Based on her research schedule, she would have had the package ready yesterday evening. That gives us maybe 36 hours before whoever has her decides she's more liability than asset." Sarah's mind was already working through the logistical requirements. She'd need weapons, surveillance equipment, transportation, and most importantly, backup. The days of solo operations were long behind her, assuming she'd ever really worked alone. Even Black Widow had relied on an extensive support network. "I'll need my gear," she said, the words tasting like copper in her mouth. "And I'll need guarantees. When this is over, I disappear again. New identity, new location, and this time you forget I exist." Torres nodded, already arranged. "Your handler will brief you on the details, but you have full support and unlimited resources. This is Phoenix Protocol, remember? No limits, no questions asked." Sarah stood up, her movements sharp and purposeful. The transformation was already beginning. Sarah the barista fading as Elena the operative reasserted herself. "I need an hour to close up here and make arrangements. Then I'm gone." "There's a car waiting outside," Torres said, pocketing the tablet. "Your handler is expecting you at the safe house by noon. Everything you need will be there." As Torres left, Sarah began the process of shutting down her life. She called her assistant manager, explaining that a family emergency required her to leave town immediately. She fed her cat extra food and left a note for her neighbor, asking him to check on Whiskers until she returned. Small lies to cover a larger truth that no one could ever know. The safe house was a nondescript bungalow in the Pearl District, the kind of place that tourists walked past without noticing. Sarah approached it on foot, her trained eyes scanning for surveillance and potential threats. The neighborhood was quiet, filled with the mid-morning calm of people at work or school. She knocked on the door using the pattern Torres had specified. 3 short raps followed by 2 long ones. The man who answered was someone she recognized immediately, despite the years that had passed since their last meeting. David Park, former Navy SEAL turned CIA operative, one of the few people who'd worked with Black Widow and lived to tell about it. "Elena," he said, stepping aside to let her enter. "I was hoping I'd never see you again." Sarah walked into the living room, noting the tactical equipment spread across the coffee table. Body armor, weapons, surveillance gear, and communication devices. Someone had done their homework, assembling exactly the type of equipment she'd request for this kind of operation. "David," she replied, picking up a familiar weight. Her old service weapon, a Heckler & Koch USP chambered in .45 ACP. It felt like greeting an old friend, the grip molded to her hand through years of use. "I was hoping you'd found an honest job by now." David laughed, the sound carrying genuine warmth despite the circumstances. "I tried civilian life for about 6 months. Turns out security consulting is boring when nobody's shooting at you." Sarah began examining the equipment, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. Everything was there, from night vision goggles to lockpicking tools, to enough ammunition to fight a small war. Whoever had authorized this operation wasn't taking any chances. "Brief me," she said, loading a magazine with the automatic movements of someone who'd done it thousands of times. "And don't leave out any details. My retirement depends on coming back alive." David activated a wall-mounted screen, displaying detailed blueprints of the Genesis facility. Dr. Amanda Chun, age 42, biochemist specializing in viral genetics. She's been working undercover at Genesis for 8 months, reporting on their classified research projects. 3 days ago, she transmitted a message indicating she'd discovered something significant. The screen showed security camera footage of a woman leaving the facility the previous evening. Dr. Chun walked quickly toward the parking garage, frequently checking over her shoulder. Even in the grainy footage, Sarah could see the tension in her movements. "This is the last confirmed sighting," David continued. "She never made it to her car. Security footage shows her entering the garage at 6:47 p.m., but she never exits. Her vehicle was found in the parking spot the next morning, keys still in the ignition." Sarah studied the footage, noting the timing and Dr. Chun's body language. Inside job. Someone was waiting for her, someone who knew her routine and had access to the facility. She looked up at David. What was she working on? David's expression darkened. "That's where it gets complicated. Officially, Genesis is developing new vaccines for the Defense Department. Unofficially, they're weaponizing viral strains for potential biological warfare applications." Sarah felt the familiar chill of operations that existed in the gray areas between legal and necessary. Bioweapons were the kind of tools that governments developed but never admitted to possessing. Insurance policies against threats that might never materialize. Dr. Chun's package contained not just research data, but evidence of human testing, David continued. Genesis has been conducting unauthorized experiments on prison populations, testing the effectiveness of their viral strains on live subjects. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Human experimentation was a line that supposedly civilized nations didn't cross, at least not officially. If Genesis was conducting these tests with government knowledge, it represented a level of moral compromise that even hardened operatives found disturbing. Who else knows about this? Sarah asked, though she suspected the answer would be depressingly short. Dr. Chun, her handler, and maybe 3 people in Washington with the clearance to authorize Phoenix Protocol. David paused, meeting her eyes. "And now you." Sarah continued her equipment check, the familiar ritual helping her process the magnitude of what she was walking into. This wasn't just about extracting a compromised asset. It was about containing information that could topple governments and expose war crimes that were supposed to remain hidden forever. "What's the extraction plan?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would be disappointingly vague. David smiled grimly. "That's why we called you. You're the extraction plan. Get in, find Dr. Chun, secure the package, and get out. How you do it is entirely up to you." Sarah had worked operations like this before, missions where success was measured not by elegant planning, but by the ability to adapt when everything went wrong. They were calling it Phoenix Protocol, but she recognized it for what it really was, a Hail Mary pass with nuclear implications. Timeline? She asked, strapping on the shoulder holster with movements that felt like muscle memory. You leave for Seattle in 2 hours. Dr. Chun has been missing for 14 hours now. Best case scenario, you have 24 hours before someone decides she's more trouble than she's worth. Sarah nodded, the familiar weight of an impending operation settling over her. The barista who'd made lattes that morning was gone, replaced by the operative who'd once walked into a Moscow safe house and eliminated 6 armed guards with nothing but a knife and 15 minutes of darkness. I'll need backup, she said, though she knew the answer before David shook his head. This is Black Ops, Elena. If you're caught, you're on your own. The agency will disavow any knowledge of the operation, and you'll be treated as a rogue operative who went off the reservation. Sarah had heard those words before, the standard disclaimer that accompanied missions too sensitive for official acknowledgement. It was the price of working in the shadows, the understanding that some operations were too important to risk political exposure. What about extraction? She asked, loading her gear into a tactical bag that looked like expensive luggage. There's a safe house in Seattle, backup transportation, and enough cash to disappear if things go sideways. David handed her a smartphone loaded with encrypted communication software. But if you're compromised, you're on your own. Sarah pocketed the phone, her mind already shifting into operational mode. The comfortable routine of café life was fading, replaced by the hyper-vigilant awareness that kept operatives alive. In hostile territory, she could feel the transformation happening, Sarah the barista becoming Elena the weapon. One more thing, David said as she headed toward the door. Genesis isn't just a pharmaceutical company. They're connected to some very dangerous people, private military contractors who don't ask questions and don't leave witnesses. Sarah paused at the door, her hand on the handle. Are you trying to scare me, David? Because if you are, you're about 20 years too late. David's expression was serious, the kind of gravity that came from sending friends into situations they might not survive. I'm trying to keep you alive, Elena, because if you don't come back from this, I'm the one who has to live with sending you. Sarah opened the door, stepping back into a world she'd tried to leave behind. The morning air felt different now, charged with the electricity of impending violence. She could feel her senses sharpening, her awareness expanding to encompass threats and opportunities that civilians never noticed. Tell me something, David, she said, not looking back. When this is over, when Dr. Chun is safe and the package is secured, what happens to Genesis? Do they get shut down, or do they just relocate and continue their experiments somewhere else? David's silence was answer enough. Sarah nodded, understanding the real nature of the mission. This wasn't about justice or protecting innocent people. It was about controlling information, managing scandals, and ensuring that certain truths never saw daylight. She walked toward the waiting car, her footsteps echoing off the empty street. Behind her, Sarah the barista was already becoming a memory, another carefully constructed identity that would be filed away and forgotten. Ahead lay Seattle, a compromised asset and the kind of operation that ended careers or lives with equal frequency. The driver was young, probably CIA or NSA, with the kind of nervous energy that came from working with operatives whose reputations preceded them. He didn't speak during the drive to the airport, probably brief to treat her like dangerous cargo that needed to be delivered intact. Sarah spent the drive reviewing the mission files on her encrypted phone, memorizing floor plans and security protocols. Genesis Pharmaceuticals was a fortress designed to keep secrets in and unauthorized personnel out. But every fortress had weaknesses, and she'd built her reputation on finding them. The flight to Seattle was uneventful, first class with a cover. Story about consulting for a biotech firm. Sarah used the time to continue her mental preparation, visualizing the facility layout and rehearsing potential scenarios. The hardest part of any operation was the unknown variables, the elements that couldn't be planned for or predicted. As the plane descended through the clouds towards SeaTac Airport, Sarah caught her reflection in the window. Same face, same features, but something fundamental had changed. The careful mask of normalcy was gone, replaced by the focused intensity of someone preparing for war. She was no longer Sarah the barista. She was Black Widow, and she was going hunting. The Seattle Safe House was a converted warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of place where freight trains rattled past at 3 in the morning, and nobody asked questions about unusual activity. Elena arrived by taxi just after midnight, her trained eyes automatically cataloging the defensive positions and escape routes. The building's exterior was deliberately unremarkable, weathered brick and steel that blended seamlessly with the surrounding industrial landscape. The contact waiting for her was a surprise. Agent Rebecca Martinez, a woman Elena had worked with during the Prague operation, the mission that had supposedly ended both their careers. Martinez was older now, silver threading through her black hair, but her eyes still held the sharp intelligence that had made her one of the CIA's most effective handlers. "I thought you were dead," Elena said, dropping her bag on the concrete floor. The warehouse interior had been converted into a temporary command center with banks of monitors, communication equipment, and enough weapons to outfit a small army. Martinez smiled, the expression carrying a mixture of relief and resignation. "I thought you were retired. Guess we were both wrong." She gestured toward the surveillance screens showing multiple views of the Genesis facility. "How much did David tell you about what we're really dealing with?" Elena approached the monitors, her operational mind automatically processing the tactical information. The facility was larger than the satellite images had suggested, with multiple buildings connected by underground tunnels. Security was extensive but not impenetrable, the kind of corporate protection that prioritized deterrence over actual combat effectiveness. Enough to know that Dr. Chun stumbled onto something that powerful people want to keep buried, Elena replied, studying the guard rotations displayed on one screen. Human experimentation, bioweapons development, the usual menu of government-sanctioned atrocities. Martinez activated another screen, showing personnel files for the Genesis security team. "It's worse than that." Dr. Chun's last transmission indicated that Genesis isn't just developing bioweapons for the Defense Department. They're creating designer viruses for private clients, custom pathogens that can target specific genetic markers. Elena felt the familiar chill of operations that ventured into truly dangerous territory. Custom bioweapons meant the ability to commit genocide while maintaining plausible deniability, the kind of capability that could destabilize entire regions. Who's buying? That's what Dr. Chun was trying to find out when she disappeared. Martinez pulled up satellite imagery showing the facility's parking structure. Her last known position was here, level B3 of the underground garage. Security footage shows her entering at 6:47 p.m., but the cameras malfunctioned for exactly 11 minutes starting at 6:52. Elena studied the timeline, her mind reconstructing the sequence of events. 11 minutes was enough time to subdue a target, load them into a vehicle, and exit through service tunnels that wouldn't appear on standard building plans. Inside job. Someone with access to the security system. That's our assessment too. Martinez highlighted several personnel files. These are our primary suspects, all with security clearances high enough to access the camera systems. The problem is, we don't know which one is compromised or how deep this goes. Elena memorized the faces, her trained mind cataloging details that might prove crucial during infiltration. 3 men, 2 women, all with backgrounds that suggested competence and professionalism. Any one of them could be the inside contact. Or the real threat could be someone not yet identified. What about the package Dr. Chun was carrying? Elena asked, though she suspected the answer would complicate the mission further. Martinez's expression darkened. According to her handler, it contained more than just research data. Dr. Chun had discovered evidence of a black market network selling Genesis's bioweapons to terrorist organizations and rogue states. The package includes client lists, payment records, and detailed specifications for viruses that could kill millions. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. This wasn't just about covering up human experimentation or protecting classified research. It was about preventing weapons of mass destruction from falling into the hands of people who would use them without hesitation. The stakes had just escalated from career-ending to civilization-threatening. Timeline? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer would be measured in hours, not days. Dr. Chun has been missing for 16 hours. Based on her psychological profile, she'd try to resist interrogation for as long as possible, but everyone breaks eventually. Martinez paused, meeting Elena's eyes. Best case scenario, we have 12 hours before she gives up the location of backup copies or additional intelligence. Elena nodded, her mind already formulating infiltration strategies. The facility was designed to keep people out, but every security system had weaknesses. The key was finding them before the opposition found Dr. Chin's breaking point. I'll need more than just floor plans, Elena said, studying the surveillance feeds. Guard schedules, shift changes, maintenance windows, anything that creates predictable patterns. Martinez activated a secure terminal, pulling up files that made Elena's eyebrows rise. Personnel records, security protocols, even psychological profiles of key Genesis employees. Someone had been conducting extensive surveillance for months, building the kind of comprehensive intelligence package that suggested long-term planning. How long have you been watching them? Elena asked, scrolling through the data. 8 months, ever since Dr. Chun made contact. We knew Genesis was involved in classified research, but we didn't realize the scope until she started reporting. Martinez highlighted several entries in the security logs. These are the patterns we've identified. Windows were surveillance. Coverage is reduced or guard positions are predictable. Elena studied the information, her operational mind automatically calculating probabilities and risks. The facility's security was professional but not military grade, designed to protect against industrial espionage rather than infiltration by trained operatives. Still, the underground layout and multiple access points created complications that would require careful planning. What about extraction? Elena asked, though she suspected the answer would be disappointingly vague. There's a service tunnel that connects to the city's storm drain system. It's not on any official building plans, but our surveillance indicates it's used for waste disposal and emergency access. Martinez showed her a schematic that looked like it had been drawn by someone crawling through darkness with a flashlight. Dr. Chun would know about it from her research on the facility's waste management systems. Elena memorized the route, noting the potential choke points and areas where pursuit would be most likely. The tunnel system was extensive but not unlimited, creating opportunities for both escape and entrapment. Success would depend on timing, preparation, and the ability to adapt when plans inevitably went wrong. What about backup? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Martinez shook her head. This is Black Ops, Elena. If you're captured, you're on your own. The agency will disavow any knowledge of the operation, and you'll be treated as a rogue operative who went off the reservation. Elena had heard those words before, the standard disclaimer that accompanied missions too sensitive for official acknowledgement. It was the price of working in the shadows, the understanding that some operations were too important to risk political exposure. I'll need specialized equipment, Elena said, examining the weapons cache. Standard firearms and tactical gear were useful, but infiltrating a bioweapons facility required tools that most operatives never encountered. Gas masks, hazmat suits, chemical detection equipment. Martinez led her to a sealed container that looked like it belonged in a laboratory rather than a weapons cache. Everything's here, including antidotes for known Genesis bioweapons. The problem is, we don't know what they're currently working on or what defensive measures they might deploy. Elena examined the specialized equipment, her mind cataloging the potential threats. Bioweapons facilities were inherently dangerous, filled with pathogens that could kill through simple exposure. The fact that Genesis was developing custom viruses meant the threat level was exponentially higher than traditional military targets. "One more thing," Martinez said, her voice carrying a weight that suggested bad news. "Genesis isn't just a pharmaceutical company. They're connected to Meridian Security, a private military contractor with a reputation for extreme measures." Elena recognized the name immediately. Meridian Security was the kind of organization that handled problems too sensitive for government agencies, employing former Special Forces operatives who operated without the constraints of military law. If they were involved, the mission had just become significantly more dangerous. "How many operators?" Elena asked, though she suspected the answer would be more than she wanted to face alone. "Unknown, but probably at least a dozen on site at any given time. They're not just security guards, Elena. These are former Delta Force, Navy SEALs, and International Special Operations veterans." Martinez paused, her expression grave. "If you encounter them, don't expect them to follow rules of engagement." Elena nodded, understanding the implications. Meridian operators wouldn't hesitate to use lethal force, and they wouldn't be constrained by concerns about civilian casualties or political consequences. The mission had just escalated from infiltration to potential combat against highly trained adversaries. "What about Dr. Chun's current location?" Elena asked, studying the facility blueprints for potential holding areas. "Unknown, but probably somewhere in the lower levels where sound wouldn't carry and unauthorized personnel wouldn't have access." Martinez highlighted several areas on the schematic. "These are the most likely locations, based on the facility's layout and security protocols." Elena memorized the potential holding areas, noting the access routes and defensive positions. Finding Dr. Chun would require systematic searching, but the facility's size meant she couldn't afford to waste time on empty rooms or dead ends. "I'll need a way to communicate once I'm inside," Elena said, examining the communication equipment. Standard radio frequencies would be monitored, but the facility's underground construction might create opportunities for covert transmission. Martinez handed her a device that looked like a standard smartphone, but felt heavier than civilian electronics. "Encrypted satellite communication, hardened against electronic warfare. Range is limited underground, but it should work from the via upper levels." Elena pocketed the device, her mind already formulating contingency plans. Communication was crucial for coordination, but it also created vulnerabilities that could be exploited by skilled adversaries. The key was maintaining contact without compromising operational security. "What about the Genesis personnel?" Elena asked, scrolling through the employee files. "Are there any potential allies or sources of information?" Martinez highlighted several profiles. Dr. Sarah Kim, biochemist, has expressed concerns about the ethics of Genesis's research. James Peterson, security supervisor, has been reporting suspicious activities to his superiors. Both could be potential assets if approached correctly. Elena studied the profiles, noting the psychological indicators that suggested moral flexibility or institutional loyalty. Dr. Kim looked like someone who might be willing to cooperate if presented with evidence of wrongdoing. Peterson appeared more complicated, possibly loyal to the company, but concerned about illegal activities. What about the bioweapons themselves? Elena asked, though she suspected the answer would be deeply disturbing. According to Dr. Chun's reports, Genesis has developed at least 12 different viral strains, each designed for specific applications. Martinez pulled up a classified document that made Elena's blood run cold. Hemorrhagic fever viruses, neurological agents, even pathogens designed to target specific ethnic groups. Elena felt the familiar nausea that accompanied exposure to humanity's darkest capabilities. Bioweapons were the ultimate expression of industrialized hatred, tools designed to kill indiscriminately while maintaining plausible deniability. The fact that Genesis was developing custom variants meant the threat was even more severe than traditional weapons. Who else knows about this? Elena asked, though she suspected the answer would be depressingly limited. Dr. Chun, her handler, maybe 6 people in Washington with the clearance to authorize Phoenix Protocol. Martinez paused, meeting Elena's eyes. And now you. Elena continued her equipment check, the familiar ritual helping her process the magnitude of what she was walking into. This wasn't just about extracting a compromised asset or securing classified information. It was about preventing weapons of mass destruction from falling into the hands of people who would use them without hesitation. How do I identify the package? Elena asked, though she suspected Dr. Chun would have taken precautions to protect the information. According to her handler, it's a standard USB drive with advanced encryption. Dr. Chun was supposed to hide it in a predetermined location if she felt threatened. Martinez showed her a schematic of Dr. Chun's laboratory workspace. Most likely hiding places are here, here, and here. Elena memorized the locations, noting the potential challenges of accessing each site. Dr. Chun's laboratory was in a secure area of the facility, protected by multiple layers of security and constant surveillance. Retrieving the package would require careful timing and possibly creating diversions to avoid detection. What about the deadline? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer would be measured in hours. Dr. Chun has been missing for 18 hours. Based on standard interrogation protocols, should try to resist for as long as possible, but everyone breaks eventually. Martinez's voice carried the weight of experience. Best case scenario, we have 10 hours before she gives up critical information. Elena nodded, her mind shifting into operational mode. 10 hours was enough time for a carefully planned infiltration, assuming everything went according to plan. The problem was that operations of this complexity never went according to plan. And the margin for error was measured in lives rather than mission objectives. I'll need to scout the facility before attempting infiltration, Elena said, studying the satellite imagery. Real-time intelligence is crucial for this kind of operation. Martinez activated another screen, showing live surveillance feeds from multiple angles around the Genesis facility. We've had eyes on the target for the past week. Guard rotations, delivery schedules, personnel movements, everything you need to establish patterns. Elena studied the feeds, her trained eye automatically identifying security weaknesses and operational opportunities. The facility was well protected, but not impenetrable, with predictable patterns that could be exploited by someone with the right training and equipment. What about getaway transportation? Elena asked, though she suspected the answer would involve improvisation. There's a motorcycle parked 2 blocks from the facility, keys hidden under the seat. Martinez handed her a small device that looked like a garage door opener. GPS tracker and emergency beacon, but use it only if you're completely compromised. Elena pocketed the device, understanding the implications. The emergency beacon would bring immediate extraction, but it would also expose the operation to hostile forces. It was a last resort that came with significant risks and political consequences. One final question, Elena said, shouldering her equipment bag. When this is over, when Dr. Chun is safe and the package is secured, what happens to Genesis? Martinez's expression was carefully neutral. That's above my pay grade, Elena. Our job is to extract the asset and secure the intelligence. What happens afterward is a political decision. Elena nodded, understanding the real nature of the mission. This wasn't about justice or protecting innocent people. It was about controlling information, managing scandals, and ensuring that certain truths remained hidden from public scrutiny. The drive to the Genesis facility took 45 minutes through Seattle's industrial landscape, past shipping containers and freight yards that looked identical in the pre-dawn darkness. Elena used the time to review the mission parameters one final time, memorizing floor plans and security protocols that could mean the difference between success and catastrophe. The facility appeared gradually through the morning haze, a modern complex of glass and steel that could have housed any number of legitimate businesses. Only the extensive security measures and isolation from surrounding buildings suggested the sensitive nature of the work conducted inside. Elena parked her rented sedan in a public lot 6 blocks away, close enough for rapid extraction, but far enough to avoid suspicion. The motorcycle Martinez had mentioned was exactly where promised, a black Honda sport bike with enough power to outrun pursuit vehicles. She spent an hour conducting surveillance from multiple positions, timing guard rotations and mapping patrol routes. The facility's security was professional but predictable, with patterns that could be exploited by someone with patience and precise timing. The service entrance she'd identified was protected by a single guard and electronic access controls. But the timing window between patrol sweeps was sufficient for infiltration. Elena checked her equipment one final time, ensuring that weapons were secure and communication devices were functional. At 0347 hours, she began her approach. The guard was distracted by a radio transmission, his attention focused on the communication, rather than the shadows around the building perimeter. Elena moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent years perfecting the art of invisibility. The electronic lock yielded to her bypass device in less than 30 seconds, the door opening silently on well-maintained hinges. Elena slipped inside, immediately scanning for threats and surveillance equipment that might compromise her presence. The interior was sterile and modern, with the kind of clinical atmosphere that suggested serious scientific work. Emergency. Lighting cast long shadows down empty corridors, creating an environment that felt both familiar and threatening. Elena consulted her memorized building plans, orientating herself within the facility's layout. Dr. Chun's laboratory was 3 floors down, accessed through a service elevator that would require additional security bypasses. The extraction route led through the basement levels to the storm drain system Martinez had identified. Moving through the facility required constant vigilance, with security cameras and motion sensors positioned to detect unauthorized movement. Elena's training allowed her to navigate the surveillance network, timing her movements to avoid detection while maintaining progress toward her objective. The first floor contained administrative offices and public areas, spaces designed to present a legitimate corporate image to visitors and regulatory inspectors. Elena moved through these areas quickly, knowing that the real work of the facility would be conducted in the more secure lower levels. The service elevator was protected by a keycard reader and biometric scanner, security measures that would have stopped most intruders. Elena's specialized equipment included bypass devices designed to defeat these systems, though using them would create electronic evidence of her presence. The elevator descended smoothly, carrying her deeper into the facility's secure areas. Each floor revealed more sophisticated security measures and more obvious signs of classified research. By the time she reached the basement levels, Elena was operating in an environment that felt more like a military installation than a pharmaceutical company. Dr. Chun's laboratory was located in a restricted section of the 3rd basement level, protected by multiple security checkpoints and constant surveillance. Elena approached the area with heightened caution, knowing that detection at this stage would compromise the entire mission. The laboratory itself was a marvel of modern scientific equipment with biosafety cabinets, molecular analysis systems, and computer terminals that hummed with quiet efficiency. Elena began her search for the missing package, checking the hiding places Martinez had identified. The first two locations were empty, but the third yielded results. Hidden behind a false panel in Dr. Chun's workstation was a small waterproof container, the kind used to protect sensitive electronics from environmental damage. Inside was a standard USB drive with advanced encryption, exactly as Martinez had described. Elena secured the device in her equipment pouch, her mind already shifting to the next phase of the operation. Finding the package was only half the mission. Locating Dr. Chun would require searching the facility's detention areas and potential holding cells. The basement levels contained several rooms that could serve as temporary holding facilities, areas with reinforced doors and minimal surveillance coverage. Elena began systematically checking each location, her movements careful and deliberate. The third room she investigated showed signs of recent occupancy. Restraint marks on a metal chair, food containers that still carried the scent of recent meals, and most importantly, a small piece of fabric that matched Dr. Chun's clothing from the security footage. Elena examined the evidence, her trained mind reconstructing the sequence of events. Dr. Chun had been held here recently, probably within the past few hours. The question was whether she was still in the facility or had been moved to a different location. A sound from the corridor made Elena freeze, her hand moving instinctively to her weapon. Footsteps, multiple people moving with the disciplined precision of trained personnel. Elena quickly assessed her options, identifying cover positions and potential escape routes. The footsteps approached her location, accompanied by voices that she recognized as professional communication rather than casual conversation. Elena positioned herself behind a support pillar, her weapon ready but not immediately visible. Two men entered the room, both wearing tactical gear and carrying weapons that suggested military or law enforcement backgrounds. They moved with the confident efficiency of people accustomed to dangerous situations, their eyes scanning for threats while maintaining professional alertness. Target was definitely here, one of them said, examining the chair where Dr. Chun had been restrained. Probably moved within the past hour, based on the scent markers. Elena remained motionless, her breathing controlled and silent. These were Meridian security operatives, the kind of professionals who would respond to threats with immediate and overwhelming force. Direct confrontation would be disadvantageous, unless absolutely necessary. Orders are to locate and neutralize any unauthorized personnel, the second operative said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that suggested leadership responsibilities. Dr. Chun is being moved to the secondary facility, so we need to secure this area. Elena's mind processed the information quickly. Dr. Chun was being moved to a different location, which meant the extraction window was rapidly closing. Secondary facility was probably the backup location Martinez had mentioned, a site designed for situations where the primary facility was compromised. The two operatives completed their sweep and moved on, their voices fading as they continued their patrol. Elena waited several minutes before emerging from cover, her mind already adapting to the changed circumstances. Finding Dr. Chun would now require leaving the Genesis facility and locating the secondary site, a complication that would significantly increase the mission's difficulty. Elena activated her communication device, knowing that contacting Martinez would risk exposure but was necessary given the developing situation. Package secured, but the asset has been moved, Elena transmitted, using the coded language that would obscure the message's meaning from casual interception. Need immediate intelligence on secondary location. Martinez's response came within minutes. Secondary facility is located in the warehouse district, approximately 12 kilometers from your current position. Sending coordinates now. Elena received the location data, her mind already calculating travel time and approach routes. The secondary facility would be even more heavily guarded than Genesis, with operatives who were now aware that someone was conducting hostile operations against their organization. The extraction route through the storm drain system was still viable, but Elena would need to move quickly before additional security measures were implemented. She began retracing her path through the facility, her movements more urgent now. That time was becoming critical. The service elevator carried her back to the upper levels, where the facility's normal operations created cover for her movement. Elena could hear increased radio traffic from the security teams, indicating that her presence might have been detected or at least suspected. The exit route required crossing an open area where surveillance coverage was comprehensive, but Elena's training included techniques for moving through monitored spaces without triggering automated detection systems. She timed her movement to coincide with a guard rotation, using the brief window when cameras were repositioning to cross the danger zone. The service entrance was still unguarded, but Elena could see additional security personnel in the distance, their presence suggesting that the facility's alert status had been elevated. She slipped through the door and into the pre-dawn darkness, immediately moving toward the extraction point. The motorcycle was exactly where Martinez had promised, its engine turning over smoothly when Elena activated the ignition. She pulled away from the facility at a moderate pace, avoiding the kind of rapid acceleration that would attract attention from security patrols. The ride to the secondary facility took 20 minutes through Seattle's industrial district, past shipping yards and manufacturing plants that operated around the clock. Elena used the time to review what she knew about the new target, adapting her infiltration plan to account for the changed circumstances. The secondary facility was smaller than Genesis, but more heavily fortified, with the kind of security measures that suggested it was designed for exactly this type of contingency. Elena parked the motorcycle in an alley 6 blocks away, close enough for rapid extraction, but concealed from casual observation. Surveillance of the new target revealed a much more challenging operational environment. The facility was surrounded by high walls topped with razor wire, with guard towers positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. Electronic sensors and motion detectors created multiple layers of detection that would make infiltration extremely difficult. Elena spent an hour studying the security arrangements, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. The facility's location in an industrial area meant that noise and activity were common, potentially masking the sounds of infiltration. A loading dock on the facility's north side appeared to be the most promising approach route. The infiltration would require different techniques than those used at Genesis. This facility was designed to repel hostile forces rather than simply deter casual intrusion. Elena would need to rely on stealth, timing, and possibly violence if her presence was detected. She activated her communication device one final time before beginning the approach. Beginning secondary infiltration. If you don't hear from me in 4 hours, consider the mission compromised. Martinez's response was immediate and grim. Understood. Good hunting, Elena. Elena secured the communication device and began her final approach toward the facility where Dr. Chun was being held. The mission had evolved from extraction to rescue, with stakes that measured success in lives rather than intelligence objectives. The loading dock was protected by a single guard and electronic access controls, but the security was more sophisticated than at Genesis. Elena would need to use her most advanced infiltration techniques to gain entry without triggering alarms. That would compromise the entire operation. As she moved through the shadows toward the facility's perimeter, Elena felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that accompanied high-stakes operations. This was what she had been trained for, what she had spent years perfecting. The comfortable routine of café life seemed like a distant memory compared to the immediate reality of combat preparation. The guard at the loading dock was alert and professional, his attention focused on the approach routes rather than distracted by electronic devices. Elena would need to time her approach perfectly, using the brief moments when his attention was directed elsewhere to close the distance. She moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent years perfecting the art of stalking human prey. Each step was calculated and deliberate, designed to minimize noise while maintaining optimal positioning for the final approach. Electronic lock on the loading dock door was more sophisticated than the one at Genesis, requiring a different bypass technique. Elena's specialized equipment included devices designed to defeat these systems, though using them would create electronic evidence of her presence. The door opened silently, revealing a corridor that led deeper into the facility. Elena slipped inside, immediately scanning for threats and surveillance equipment that might compromise her presence. The interior was more utilitarian than Genesis, designed for function rather than corporate image. Finding Dr. Chun in this facility would require systematic searching, but Elena's training included techniques for rapid facility clearance. She began moving through the building's layout, checking each room and corridor for signs of the missing scientist. The facility's basement levels contained the kind of holding cells that Elena had expected to find at Genesis. These were designed for long-term detention rather than temporary restraint, with reinforced doors and minimal surveillance coverage. Elena found Dr. Chun in the third cell she checked, bound to a chair and showing signs of prolonged interrogation. The scientist was conscious but clearly exhausted, her eyes reflecting the kind of stress that came from hours of questioning under duress. "Dr. Chun," Elena whispered, moving quickly to release the restraints. "I'm here to get you out. Can you walk?" Dr. Chun nodded weakly, her voice barely audible. "They want the access codes for the backup data. I haven't told them anything, but I don't know how much longer I can hold out." Elena helped Dr. Chun to her feet, assessing her physical condition. The scientist was injured but mobile, though she would need assistance during the extraction. "We need to move now. Can you follow my lead?" Dr. Chun nodded, drawing on reserves of strength that Elena recognized in people who had survived extreme situations. "The package you're looking for, it's not just research data. It's evidence of something much worse." Elena guided Dr. Chun toward the exit, her senses hyper-alert for signs of pursuit or detection. The facility's security would eventually discover the empty cell, but Elena hoped to have enough time to reach the extraction point before alarms were raised. The corridor leading to the loading dock was empty, but Elena could hear voices from other parts of the facility. The Meridian security operatives were conducting their own activities, probably debriefing about the Genesis infiltration and planning their response. Elena and Dr. Chen reached the loading dock without incident, but the approach to the exit was complicated by the presence of additional guards. Elena would need to create a distraction or find an alternative route that wouldn't expose them to hostile fire. The extraction route through the storm drain system was still viable, but reaching it would require crossing an open area where they would be vulnerable to detection. Elena assessed their options, weighing the risks of different approaches against the likelihood of successful extraction. Dr. Chun's condition was deteriorating, the stress of captivity and interrogation taking its toll on her physical capabilities. Elena realized that time was running out, and decisive action would be necessary to complete the mission successfully. The sound of approaching vehicles made the decision for her. Meridian Security was deploying additional personnel, probably in response to the Genesis infiltration. Elena and Dr. Chun would need to move immediately or risk being trapped in the facility. Elena activated her emergency beacon, knowing that it would bring immediate extraction, but also expose the operation to hostile forces. The decision was tactical rather than strategic, prioritizing the mission objective over operational security. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Helicopter rotors echoed through the industrial district as military assets converged on their position. Elena guided Dr. Chun toward the designated extraction point, her weapon ready for the confrontation that was now inevitable. The rescue operation had begun, and Elena knew that everything depended on the next few minutes. Success would mean saving Dr. Chen and securing the bioweapon's intelligence. Failure would mean exposure, capture, and possibly the release of weapons that could kill millions. As they moved through the facility's final corridors, Elena felt the familiar clarity that came with combat operations. This was what she had been trained for, what she had spent years perfecting. The comfortable routine of cafe life was now completely forgotten, replaced by the immediate reality of life and death decisions. The extraction point was just ahead, but Elena could hear pursuit closing behind them. The final phase of the mission was about to begin, and everything would depend on training, luck, and the kind of desperate courage that defined the difference between operators and civilians. The extraction point was a rooftop helipad 3 blocks from the secondary facility, accessible through a network of fire escapes and maintenance ladders that Elena had memorized during her approach. She guided Dr. Chun through the building's emergency exit, her ears straining for sounds of pursuit that would indicate their escape had been detected. The industrial district's pre-dawn darkness provided cover, but Elena knew that Meridian security operatives would be equipped with night vision and thermal imaging equipment. Staying ahead of professional hunters required constant movement and unpredictable routing, tactics that were complicated by Dr. Chun's deteriorating physical condition. How much further? Dr. Chun whispered, her voice strained from the effort of maintaining their pace. The scientist had been impressive during the initial extraction, drawing on reserves of determination that Elena recognized in people who had survived extreme situations. But prolonged captivity and interrogation had taken their toll, and her endurance was rapidly fading. Elena consulted her internal map of the area, calculating distances and timing. 2 more blocks, then we go vertical. Can you handle climbing? She studied Dr. Chun's face, noting the exhaustion and stress that no amount of willpower could completely overcome. Dr. Chun nodded, though Elena could see the effort it took. I've done rock climbing. Not recently, but I remember the basics. She paused, her breathing labored. The information I gathered, it's worse than bioweapons. Genesis has been developing population control agents, viruses designed to reduce fertility rates in targeted demographics. Elena felt the familiar chill of operations that ventured into truly horrific territory. Population control through biological warfare represented a level of systematic evil that even hardened operatives found disturbing. The implications went beyond military applications to genocidal social engineering on a massive scale. We'll discuss it during debrief, Elena said, her attention focused on the immediate tactical situation. Behind them, she could hear the distinctive sound of tactical vehicles deploying, the kind of rapid response that indicated professional military operations. Meridian Security was mobilizing their full resources, treating the infiltration as a serious threat to their organization. The fire escape Elena had identified was attached to a warehouse that appeared abandoned, its windows dark and its loading dock sealed with heavy chains. Elena tested the lowest ladder, confirming that it would support their combined weight before beginning the ascent. Climbing while supporting Dr. Chen required careful coordination, with Elena positioning herself to provide assistance when the scientist's strength faltered. The metal rungs were cold and slippery with morning condensation, creating additional challenges for maintaining secure grip and footing. They reached the 2nd floor when the first Meridian security team arrived at the building's base. Elena could see their tactical lights sweeping the area, searching for signs of their target's passage. The operatives moved with professional efficiency, but their search pattern suggested they weren't certain of the escape route. Elena pressed Dr. Chun against the building's brick wall, using the fire escape shadows to conceal their presence. Below them, the security team was conducting a systematic search of the surrounding area, checking doorways and alleys for signs. Of recent passage. They're using thermal imaging, Dr. Chun whispered, her voice barely audible. I can see the infrared scanners. Elena nodded, understanding the implications. Thermal imaging would reveal their heat signatures against the building's cooler surfaces, but the equipment's effectiveness was limited by range and environmental conditions. They needed to keep moving, using the urban environment's thermal complexity to mask their presence. The ascent continued with Elena providing constant support and encouragement. Dr. Chun's determination was admirable, but her physical limitations were becoming increasingly apparent. Each floor required longer rest periods, and her movements were becoming less coordinated as exhaustion set in. Almost there, Elena said, though they were still 2 floors from the rooftop. The helicopter will be waiting. She activated her communication device, transmitting a coded message that would alert the extraction team to their imminent arrival. The response came immediately. Extraction team in position. Be advised, hostile forces are converging on your location from multiple directions. Recommend immediate exfiltration. Elena acknowledged the transmission, her mind automatically calculating the tactical situation. Meridian Security was deploying significant resources, treating the operation as a serious threat to their organization. The extraction would need to be executed with military precision to avoid casualties. On both sides, they reached the rooftop as the first helicopter appeared on the horizon, its navigation lights cutting through the morning darkness. Elena could see the distinctive silhouette of a military transport aircraft, the kind used for special operations that required rapid insertion and extraction. The helicopter approached with practiced efficiency, its pilot demonstrating the kind of skill that came from years of combat operations. Elena guided Dr. Chun toward the designated landing zone, her weapon ready for the confrontation that was now inevitable. Meridian Security operatives appeared at the rooftop access door, their tactical gear and weapons indicating serious combat capability. Elena positioned herself between Dr. Chun and the threat, her training automatically shifting to defensive tactics designed to protect the asset. Stand down! One of the operatives shouted, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. You're surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now and we'll consider negotiation. Elena's response was immediate and decisive. She opened fire with controlled bursts, her shots precisely targeted to suppress the hostile forces without causing unnecessary casualties. The operatives responded with professional discipline, seeking cover while maintaining suppressive fire. The helicopter pilot demonstrated exceptional skill, maintaining position despite the hostile fire while the extraction team prepared for rapid departure. Elena could see the door gunner providing covering fire, his weapon creating a defensive perimeter around the landing zone. Go, go, go! Elena shouted, pushing Dr. Chun toward the helicopter's open door. The scientist moved with desperate urgency, her survival instincts overriding her physical exhaustion as she reached the aircraft's safety. Elena followed, her weapon still trained on the rooftop access door where Meridian Security operatives were regrouping for another assault. The helicopter began its departure sequence, lifting off with the controlled aggression of a military operation under fire. The industrial district fell away beneath them as the helicopter gained altitude, its pilot executing evasive maneuvers designed to avoid ground-based threats. Elena secured Dr. Chun in the aircraft's medical station, assessing her condition while the flight medic began emergency treatment. The package, Dr. Chun said, her voice weak but urgent. Did you secure the USB drive? Elena nodded, patting her equipment pouch where the encrypted device remained safe. Everything's here. We'll get you to medical treatment, then debrief about what you discovered. Dr. Chun's expression was grave despite her relief at being rescued. It's not just about bioweapons or population control. Genesis has been working with international clients, developing custom pathogens for specific military applications. The client list includes governments that would use these weapons against their own populations. Elena felt the weight of the intelligence they had secured. The USB drive contained evidence of crimes against humanity, information that could expose a network of institutional evil spanning multiple countries and organizations. The implications went far beyond corporate malfeasance to systematic preparation for genocide. The helicopter's destination was a secure medical facility outside Seattle, where Dr. Chun would receive treatment while intelligence analysts processed the recovered information. Elena would undergo standard debriefing procedures, but her part in the operation would soon be officially forgotten. As the aircraft flew through the morning sky, Elena reflected on the transformation that had occurred over the past 36 hours. She had gone from making coffee in a Portland café to conducting a high-stakes rescue operation that could prevent massive loss of life. The comfortable routine of civilian life seemed like a distant memory compared to the immediate reality of operational success. The medical facility appeared below them, a complex of buildings surrounded by security measures that indicated its classified nature. Elena could see ground personnel preparing for their arrival, medical teams, and intelligence. Officers ready to process both the rescued asset and the recovered information. The helicopter touched down with the precision of a military operation, its crew executing landing procedures that demonstrated extensive training and experience. Elena helped Dr. Chun to the waiting medical team, ensuring that the scientist received immediate attention for her injuries. "Agent Martinez wants to see you immediately," one of the intelligence officers said, approaching Elena as the medical team took charge of Dr. Chun. "She's in the secure briefing room." Elena followed the officer through corridors that reminded her of the classified facility she had worked in during her operational career. The sterile environment and security measures created an atmosphere of professional seriousness that was both familiar and somewhat nostalgic. Martinez was waiting in a conference room equipped with the kind of communication and analysis equipment that indicated significant intelligence resources. She looked up as Elena entered, her expression reflecting relief mixed with professional concern. "How is she?" Martinez asked, gesturing toward the medical wing where Dr. Chun was receiving treatment. "Physically injured, but stable. Psychologically, she's been through hell but appears resilient." Elena sat down across from Martinez, her mind already shifting to the debriefing process. "The information she gathered is worse than we anticipated." Martinez activated a secure terminal, preparing to receive the intelligence that Elena had risked her life to obtain. "Tell me everything. What did Genesis develop, and who were they working with?" Elena retrieved the USB drive from her equipment pouch, handing it to Martinez while beginning her oral report. "Bioweapons, population control agents, and custom pathogens designed for specific military applications. The client list includes governments that would use these weapons against civilian populations." Martinez inserted the USB drive into a specialized reader designed to handle encrypted intelligence. The screen filled with files and data that represented months of Dr. Chun's undercover work, evidence of systematic planning for biological warfare on a massive scale. "Jesus," Martinez whispered, scrolling through the client information. "This isn't just about weapons development. It's about preparing for systematic population control through biological means." Elena watched Martinez process the information, understanding the implications that went far beyond immediate military threats. The Genesis research represented a fundamental shift in how biological warfare could be conducted, moving from battlefield applications to social engineering through disease. "What happens now?" Elena asked, though she suspected the answer would involve classified deliberations at the highest levels of government. "The information goes to the National Security Council for analysis and action. Genesis will be shut down, their research destroyed, and their personnel investigated for war crimes." Martinez paused, meeting Elena's eyes. As for you, this operation never happened. You were never here, and we never spoke." Elena nodded, understanding the standard protocol for operations that existed in the gray areas between legal and necessary. Her part in preventing a potential genocide would remain classified, known only to a few individuals with the security clearance to access the files. "What about Dr. Chun?" Elena asked, concerned about the scientist's future after heroic actions, new identity, full medical treatment, and a generous settlement for her service. She'd disappear into the Witness Protection Program, where she can live quietly without fear of retaliation. Martinez's expression softened slightly. She saved potentially millions of lives. That deserves recognition, even if it can't be public. Elena felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond successful mission completion. Dr. Chun had risked everything to expose systematic evil, and her courage had prevented weapons of mass destruction from falling into the wrong hands. The scientist's sacrifice would never be publicly acknowledged, but it would not be forgotten. "Transportation back to Portland has been arranged," Martinez continued. "Your cover story is that you took a few days off to visit family. Everything at the café should be exactly as you left it." Elena nodded, though she wondered if returning to civilian life would be as simple as Martinez suggested. The past 48 hours had reawakened skills and instincts that she had spent 2 years trying to suppress. The comfortable routine of making coffee and serving customers seemed almost surreal compared to the intensity of combat operations. "One more thing," Martinez said, her voice carrying the weight of classified information. "This won't be the last time we need your skills. There are other situations developing, other threats that require someone with your particular capabilities." Elena had expected this conversation, understanding that intelligence agencies never truly released their best assets. The comfortable fiction of retirement was exactly that, a pleasant illusion that could be shattered whenever national security required her services. "I'm out," Elena said, though her voice lacked the conviction she had felt when making the same statement 2 years earlier. "I've done my part. Find someone else for the next crisis." Martinez smiled, the expression carrying both understanding and skepticism. "We'll see. Sometimes the world doesn't give us the luxury of choosing our battles." She stood up, extending her hand. "Thank you for what you did. The official records will never show it, but you prevented something truly horrible from happening." Elena shook Martinez's hand, feeling the weight of completed responsibility. She had successfully extracted Dr. Chun, secured the bioweapons, intelligence, and prevented weapons of mass destruction from falling into the hands of people who would use them without hesitation. The mission was complete, but the implications would continue to reverberate through classified channels for years to come. The flight back to Portland gave Elena time to process the events of the past 2 days. She had gone from making lattes to conducting the high-stakes rescue operation, from Sarah the barista to Black Widow the operative. The transformation had been seamless, suggesting that her operational skills were more deeply ingrained than she had realized. Portland appeared below the aircraft's windows as they descended toward the airport. The city's familiar skyline a welcome sight after the intensity of the Seattle operation. Elena could see the industrial district where her café was located, the neighborhood that had become her anchor to normal life. The taxi ride from the airport took her through streets that seemed unchanged despite everything that had happened. The same shops, the same traffic patterns, the same people going about their daily routines without knowing that they had been protected from a threat they would never understand. Being their café was exactly as she had left it, the familiar environment somehow both comforting and strange. Elena unlocked the door, breathing in the scent of coffee beans and remembering the routine that had defined her existence for the past 2 years. Her assistant manager had left a note reporting that everything had proceeded smoothly during her absence. Customers had asked about her, but the family emergency story had been accepted without question. The comfortable fiction of normal life was intact, ready to be resumed as if nothing had happened. Elena began the familiar ritual of preparing for the morning rush, grinding beans and calibrating equipment with movements that felt automatic despite the intervening combat operations. The muscle memory of café work was still there, overlaying the tactical skills that had dominated her consciousness for the past 48 hours. Marcus arrived at his usual time, ordering his regular cortado and asking about her family emergency with genuine concern. Elena provided the prepared cover story, watching his face for signs of suspicion that never appeared. To him, she was still Sarah the barista, someone whose most dramatic experiences involved difficult customers and broken espresso machines. As the morning rush developed, Elena found herself slipping back into the rhythm of civilian life. The familiar interactions with regular customers, the routine of making drinks and handling transactions, the comfortable predictability of a life without immediate danger or life or death decisions. But something had changed. The comfortable mask of normalcy felt different now, more like a performance than a natural state. Elena could feel the operational mindset lingering beneath the surface, ready to emerge whenever circumstances required it. The transformation from Sarah to Black Widow had been too complete to be easily reversed. Janet, the veterinarian, lingered longer than usual, studying Elena's face with the observational skills that made her effective with animal patients. "You look different," she said, her voice carrying gentle curiosity. "More alert, maybe. Like you've been through something significant." Elena managed a smile, though she wondered what Janet was seeing. Sometimes family emergencies change your perspective on things, make you realize what's really important. Janet nodded, apparently satisfied with the explanation. "Well, you seem more confident somehow. Like you've remembered something about yourself that you'd forgotten." As Janet left, Elena reflected on the observation. She had remembered something about herself, something that 2 years of civilian life had obscured but not eliminated. She was Black Widow, one of the most effective operatives in the intelligence community, someone capable of actions that most people couldn't imagine. The day continued with its familiar rhythm, but Elena found herself hyper-aware of her surroundings in ways that hadn't been present before the Seattle operation. She noticed details that civilian life had trained her to ignore: the way customers moved, the patterns of traffic outside, the subtle signs that indicated when someone was conducting surveillance. The radio in the back office remained silent, but Elena found herself listening for transmissions that might never come. Part of her expected another crisis, another situation that would require her unique skills. The comfortable fiction of retirement felt increasingly fragile, like a bubble that could burst at any moment. As evening approached and the cafe prepared to close, Elena realized that her life had fundamentally changed. She was still making coffee, still serving customers, still maintaining the outward appearance of ordinary existence. But beneath the surface, Black Widow was awake and waiting, ready to emerge whenever the world required her services. The transformation was complete, but not in the way she had expected. Elena had thought that returning to civilian life would restore her previous sense of normalcy. Instead, she had discovered that normal life was itself a kind of cover identity, a role she played while remaining fundamentally unchanged. She locked the cafe and walked home through streets that seemed both familiar and foreign. The neighborhood hadn't changed, but her perception of it had been altered by 48 hours of operational intensity. She could see potential threats and opportunities that had been invisible before, tactical considerations that would always be part of her awareness. Her apartment felt smaller somehow, the comfortable space seeming inadequate for someone who had just prevented a potential genocide. Elena fed her cat and prepared dinner with movements that felt automatic, her mind processing the events of the past 2 days. Dr. Chun was safe, receiving medical treatment and preparing for a new life under an assumed identity. The bioweapons intelligence was being analyzed by experts who would ensure that the information led to appropriate action. The immediate crisis had been resolved, but Elena knew that others would inevitably follow. The secure phone Martinez had given her remained active, its encrypted channels ready to receive transmissions that would once again transform her from Sarah the barista into Black Widow the operative. Elena placed the device in her bedside drawer, knowing that she would never be able to completely ignore its presence. As she prepared for bed, Elena realized that she had made a fundamental decision without consciously choosing it. She would continue her civilian life, maintaining the comfortable fiction of normalcy while remaining ready to respond when her skills were needed. The two identities would coexist, each serving its purpose in the complex reality of modern intelligence operations. The comfortable routine of café life would continue, but it would now serve as cover for something deeper and more significant. Elena had accepted that she would never truly retire, that her skills and experience made her too valuable to be completely released from service. She was Black Widow, protector of secrets and guardian against threats that most people would never know existed. The coffee shop was her base of operations, the mundane cover that allowed her to remain invisible while staying ready for the next crisis. The world was full of people like Dr. Chun, brave individuals who risked everything to expose systematic evil. They deserved protection, and Elena had the skills to provide it. The mission would continue, even if the public would never know about the quiet professionals who kept civilization from destroying itself. Elena turned off the lights and settled into bed, knowing that tomorrow would bring another day of making coffee and serving customers. But underneath the ordinary routine, she would remain alert and ready, a guardian angel who looked like a barista but possessed the skills of a professional killer. The radio might crackle again, carrying another urgent transmission that would transform her quiet life into operational intensity. When that happened, Elena would be ready. She was Black Widow, and the world needed her skills more than she had ever realized. The comfortable fiction of retirement was over, replaced by the more complex reality of a life lived in service to causes that could never be publicly acknowledged. Elena had found her purpose, and it lay not in the safety of civilian life, but in the dangerous necessity of protecting others from threats they would never see coming. Sleep came easily, the exhaustion of the past 2 days finally catching up with her. But even in rest, part of her remained alert, ready to respond to whatever crisis might require her unique combination of skills and experience. The transformation was complete, and there was no going back. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.